Keir Starmer seemed to believe he could stride confidently onto the world stage, puff out his chest, and dazzle us all with the promise of a shiny new trade agreement. He imagined that the cameras, the tailored suits, and the meticulously crafted sound bites would suffice. Yet within minutes, one pointed question from a Polish journalist on live television unraveled the entire performance. His big moment dissolved into a slow-motion disaster. This wasn't diplomacy. It wasn't leadership. It was humiliation dressed up in PR sheen. Beth Rigby didn't merely pose a question, she tore away the facade. Starmer stood there, smugly proclaiming a historic trade deal. But what did Britain actually gain? A flat 10% tariff on critical exports, that's all. The same Prime Minister who once boasted about tearing down trade barriers has now enshrined one and attempted to repackage it as a victory. He counted on the nation to forget. Beth didn't. She recalled Donald Trump, yes, that Donald Trump, who once insisted tariffs could be reduced to zero. That was the benchmark. That was the aspiration. And now, along comes Starmer, proudly offering a 10% tariff as if he's just saved the British economy. For all his bluster, Trump appeared to have more faith in Britain's trade potential than our own Prime Minister. Let that sink in. Then came the real gut punch. What's your message to voters who've just handed Labour its worst ever local election result? Starmer froze. He stuttered, deflected, dodged. Because the truth is, he has no message. The voters already delivered one of their own, loud, clear, and damning. Labour hasn't dipped. It hasn't stumbled. It has flatlined. This wasn't a political wobble. It was a political obituary. And Starmer stood there like a man watching his house burn to the ground, nodding blankly as the roof collapsed. He mumbled, "We absolutely get the message." No, Keir, you don't. If you did, you wouldn't be grinning like you've just opened a library in Milton Keynes. You'd be doing what leaders do, accepting responsibility and telling the truth. You've betrayed the very people who once believed in you. You promised radical change. Instead, you've delivered tariffs and excuses. What we witnessed wasn't statesmanship. It was a marketing exercise wrapped in a Union Jack. And what's worse, he didn't look shaken. He looked rehearsed. This wasn't the panic of a man out of his depth. It was cold calculation. Starmer believes public anger is a perception issue to be managed by messaging. He talks of doing what's best for the workforce. But which workforce, exactly? Name one. He gave a solitary example, Jaguar Land Rover. Ironically, they are among those now penalized by this very deal. A 10% tariff on their exports means jobs on the line, investment withering, and foreign competitors circling. And this, he calls a victory. He speaks of protecting jobs, yet the only thing he's protecting is his public image. He was outmaneuvered at the negotiation table, returned home clutching a crumpled serviette, and proclaimed it a treaty. Don't be misled by the trendy buzzwords. He throws around terms like tech, ambition, and innovation, because there's little else of substance to show. When there's no real plan, just say tech, and hope the questions stop. But voters in Sunderland, Sheffield, and South Wales aren't stopping. Because there is no technological lifeline for the steelworker who's just been made redundant. And speaking of steel, Starmer boasts that tariffs on steel have been dropped to zero. Grand. But what did we give up in exchange? Our protections. Now cheap foreign steel can flood the British market, undercutting our own industries. Port Talbot, Scunthorpe, Redcar, these aren't statistics. They are towns, people, livelihoods. And what does Starmer choose to celebrate? That we held the line on food standards. Brilliant. Jobs are vanishing, trade leverage has evaporated, but thank heavens, we've safeguarded the cucumbers. That's where he draws the line, not on sovereignty, not on industry, but on salad. This isn't economic strategy. It's political cosplay. Starmer parades in high-vis jackets, poses for cameras, and uses working people as human shields. Criticize the deal? You must be anti-worker. But the real insult is pretending this was ever for them, because it wasn't. It never was. Starmer doesn't lead. He manages, and poorly at that. When he says, "I don't make decisions for myself," it's not humility. It's a confession. He's too timid to take any decision that might unsettle the global interests he quietly serves. Every move, every statement, every policy, meticulously calculated not to serve the public, but to placate boardrooms, dominate headlines, and keep foreign allies content. This isn't leadership. It's cowardice masquerading as competence. Starmer doesn't aspire to lead Britain into a brighter future. He intends to oversee its managed decline, clipboard in hand, as though this nation were a crumbling corporation in need of quiet liquidation. But the mask is slipping. The public is beginning to see through the glossy sound bites, the hollow press conferences, and the empty declarations of victory. The time for pretense is over. No more treating 10% tariffs like consolation prizes. He was given an opportunity to show true leadership, and he crumbled. And if this is his response in a time of relative peace, one shudders to imagine the consequences of handing him greater power. Britain doesn't need caution. It needs courage. The people are awakening. The only question is, are you prepared to push back? Let your voice be heard in the comments below. If you're weary of the lies, the spin, and the betrayal, share this message and subscribe for more unfiltered scrutiny of Britain's political pretenders, because a reckoning is coming, and Keir Starmer is woefully unprepared. Labour's civil war has well and truly begun. And it is not the Conservatives driving the assault. It is Starmer's own party, imploding from within. The walls of Labour HQ are beginning to tremble under the weight of a rebellion, not from political opponents, but from nearly 50 of his own MPs, who now teeter on the brink of open defiance over what many are calling the most cold-blooded policy of his leadership to date, cuts to welfare and disability support. Yes, you read that correctly. During a cost-of-living crisis, while bankers receive tax breaks and corporate profits soar, the Labour Party, the so-called Party of Compassion, is proposing to strip back support for some of Britain's most vulnerable citizens. It's a policy so regressive, so callous, that even party insiders report Starmer was left ashen-faced when news broke that scores of Labour MPs were prepared to defy the whip. Panic ensued. The whip scrambled. Internal damage control swung into full motion. Some MPs were quietly allowed to abstain, a desperate attempt to avert what one Westminster source described as a complete mutiny. Let's call it what it is, a moral revolt. From the backbenches to the grassroots, anger is mounting. Those nearly 50 MPs have had enough of being forced to silently endorse a leadership lurching ever further to the right, enough of complicity in policies that betray the very communities Labour was founded to protect. Charities and disability rights groups have raised the alarm, warning that thousands could face destitution, homelessness, or worse. One campaigner told Sky News, "This isn't reform. It's cruelty in a suit." Even Starmer's own shadow cabinet is reportedly at breaking point. One anonymous shadow minister told ITV, "He's lost the room." The entire front bench, we're told, is seething, yet paralyzed by fear. That silence, however, may soon break. As discontent festers, so too does fear at the top of the party. And the crisis is compounded by Labour's deafening silence on international atrocities. Starmer now faces fresh fury from 38 Labour MPs over his refusal to condemn the crisis in Gaza. While Donald Trump postures over mass Palestinian evictions and the world watches in horror, Starmer can't even summon a tweet. Veterans of the party, rising stars alike, demanding accountability. One MP told The Independent, "We didn't sign up to be Trump's doormats." And yet that is precisely what Starmer is reducing Labour to, a spineless, soulless vessel, nodding along as injustice unfolds in plain sight. But this isn't just a matter of foreign policy. It is a test of moral character, and Starmer is failing. And just when one assumes the leadership could sink no lower, another betrayal emerges. His team has now blocked a national inquiry into grooming gangs, an inquiry victims and their families have pleaded for, year after year. The same Labour Party that proclaims justice and protection has now been accused of silencing the very investigation survivors have long sought. Why? That's the question echoing through communities across the country. Critics have labelled it a cover-up. Victims' families are heartbroken. One grieving parent told the BBC, "We've waited years to be heard. Labour just slammed the door in our faces." Public trust is collapsing, particularly in the north, in the very heartlands that once formed the soul of the Labour movement. Because this is not what leadership looks like. This is betrayal, pure and simple. And the internal civil war? It's only just begun.